What is up, everybody, and welcome to FLW Videos. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about team building in the Ultra League. So PvPoke ended up putting out an infographic talking about some of the top teams in the meta for the Ultra League once we had the big shakeup, a couple of grass types getting upgraded, and then more importantly, something like a Giratina getting nerfed to some extent because of the move Ancient Power, for example. So what I'm going to be doing today is, of course, talking about some of those changes, and then finally actually using one of these teams that I have personally seen a lot of success with, and then of course I'm going to pass it off to you, and we'll of course talk about some general strategies along the way. Maybe, for example, you don't have any of these Pokemon, but just knowing what the most popular Pokemon could end up being could help you to build an anti-meta team that ends up attacking some of these Pokemon, because you are going to see quite a bit of similarities between the two, especially like with a lot of legendaries. If you do enjoy this video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. But without further ado, let's actually go ahead and jump into the video. So first things first, I think something that we should talk about is going to be the actual performance increase for individual Pokemon. This is very important. So any Pokemon that has a score above 500 means on average it ends up winning more than it ends up losing, and overall it just has better effectiveness compared to the meta. So one of the bigger increases that we ended up seeing was Articuno. So Articuno is single-handedly going to be one of the more popular Pokemon that we are going to be seeing in the Ultra League. So that's something to kind of take into consideration. For me, I don't have like a Hurricane unlock for it, so it's not quite as effective without that secondary move. And then technically it got nerfed as far as Ancient Power is concerned, because Articuno had that as well. Anyways, we end up seeing good performance out of Cresselia, Lapras Meganium. Personal huge fan of Meganium. You would have to power it up to level 40 though, so just keep that in mind. So Giratina is still looking good. It is going to have to be a little bit of a different moveset. A lot of people are opting to use Shadow Sneak, for example, over Ancient Power. I actually have Ancient Power on the one that I'll be showing today, but that's just because I don't have any TMs. I'm still having to decide exactly what I want to do. Finally, we've got Registeel and then also Scizor. So Scizor was a Pokemon that would not even be considered on this list until we end up seeing this huge meta change. And you'll notice that a Pokemon like Alolan Muck just is not here anymore, when in the past, I would argue that it probably would be. So let's go ahead and talk about a couple of these teams. So the first thing that I wanted to point out is that a multitude of these teams actually end up possessing more than one legendary on the team. Now that can be frustrating for some people because of the resources, right? Like just having required to have more than one legendary Pokemon on a team for it to be successful can be a little bit frustrating. And as you can see, it'd probably be easier just to circle the teams that only require one legendary Pokemon to still be successful, to be one of the top average teams in Pokemon Go. So go ahead and take a look through this list, see if you can build a team out of any of these Pokemon. And like I said before, if you are on the side where you can't necessarily end up powering up some legendary Pokemon, I would say that the two best budget options are definitely going to be these. People tell me that Togekiss is a little difficult to find though, unless you had candies from just in the past when like Togetic was in the wild, for example. But more importantly, if you find yourself with a Giratina, for example, but you don't have a secondary move unlocked, you can still be successful with this Pokemon. I would probably just recommend going with Dragon Claw and then maybe Dragon Breath on the front end. That's personally what I've done. So we've talked a little bit about some of these teams. I'm actually going to go ahead and use my favorite one, which you can see on the screen, with Swampert, and then we've got Charizard, and then finally we do have Giratina with a secondary charge move unlocked, but you'll see exactly how many times I use that secondary charge move. It's not too common. Maybe it'll be bumped up a little bit when I can get some TMs to TM over to Shadow Sneak. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into some of the footage. So we're going to go ahead and jump into two different battles. The first one's going to be a little bit more of a cakewalk, and then in the second battle, I mean, it really came down to some strategy, but we'll talk about how even in a chance where you are kind of mirrored up against the perfect counters, you still have a chance to win if you can play it correctly. So it should be a good learning experience. So let's go and jump into the first one. The opponent's going to end up leading with an Empoleon. Now, I'm not necessarily thinking that this is a good matchup, and what I've seen a lot of people do with Empoleon, by the way, is they like to add on Ice or Blizzard to it so that they can get some coverage against maybe like some flying type Pokemon, or maybe a Venusaur, you know, something like that. So most of the time it's going to be like Hydro Cannon and then Blizzard, so we kind of know what to expect. I wanted to see exactly how much damage it would end up doing, and they actually end up transitioning out. Now, it's very fortunate that I was able to get off this Hydro Cannon just because of how quick that charm damage ends up doing. So we end up burning a shield here. So what I'm thinking is I want to go in with Charizard. And the real biggest threat that we are going to end up facing is theoretically just Ancient Power pretty much. So in this case, I tried to go with Dragon Claw and it did not work. If you've ever gone up against someone with a Togekiss, you will know that whoever uses Togekiss loves to protect their Togekiss, so they are willing to invest those shields. And that's just kind of the thing with some of these charm type attackers. It's pretty much all or nothing with them. So we're going to go ahead and hit it with the Blast Burn here. We burned through both of the shields on the Togekiss, and he's going to find out that it was not worth it to end up doing that. So we take it out. We only had to use one shield. In comes Empoleon. Going to be able to take out Charizard just because of the super effective damage. No problem. So let's go ahead and get into the last Pokemon, where we end up saving Giratina. Now, Giratina does an amazing job when the opponent has no shields. This Pokemon is just so good. And if you take out the counter, like for example Togekiss, all of a sudden this Pokemon can just come in and wreck it. Now this is one of those moments where I'm glad I had Ancient Power because it is super effective, for example, against Charizard. And I kind of like it in that case. I'm debating on Shadow Sneak versus Ancient Power. So just let me know what you think I should use in the comment section below. But anyways, we're just kind of walking through this battle. Giratina is able to take out the final two Pokemon, no problem. They have no shield, so they've got no protection against this little guy. So we're going to go ahead and move into the second battle. Now, like I said, in this particular case, what we are going to see is that this was a very, very, very tough battle. Because in this case, Swampert is going to lose to Poliwrath. I also know that people tend to hit your Swamperts with a dynamic punch. So what I wanted to do was, on that count, I wanted to switch into Giratina and take that damage because it's not going to be super effective. It has Ice Punch. Ice Punch will do way more damage, but I wanted him to waste his energy with that dynamic punch on the Giratina, assuming he wasn't baiting the shields. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and hit it with the Dragon Claw and just run it down with the Dragon Breath. That is the #1 goal. Just take that thing out, and we ended up seeing a swap. Now in this particular case, Alolan Muck should have the advantage, but what I've learned throughout experience with this, especially using Alolan Muck, is if the opponent ends up investing in using shields, Alolan Muck can't beat it. So in this case, we know that it is going to end up using a Dark Pulse, for example, just because of how the energy works. Dark Pulse is, there's no point in shield baiting because it's the lower energy requirement. So we're just going in there. We know it's going to be a Dark Pulse. We're going to go ahead and take this one out. We want to save our shield. And we're saying, you know what, job well done. We walked into the situation being at less than half health, and we almost took out the Alolan Muck completely. Now we're going to go in with Charizard. So I started noticing that something was up in this case when he started really protecting his Poliwrath. Now, you might be wondering, well, why in the world would he protect it so much? Well, the reason for it is his Poliwrath has the best chance to actually take out Charizard compared to the Pokemon in the back. And he also knows that potentially, like, Charizard is the hard counter to his Pokemon in the back. So he has to win this battle to be able to win it. What Pokemon is it? I would guess a grass type. Maybe a Meganium, maybe a Venusaur, maybe something like that. So our #1 goal is to take out this Poliwrath. And by the way, we ran into some switching issues, which is just very unfortunate. I tried to switch here, and it wouldn't do it because I wanted Swampert to take the damage, build up, hit it with maybe Dragon Claw, and then finally get up to a Blast Burn and be ready to go. But that is not what happened, so that was very unfortunate. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and actually take out this Poliwrath, and we're getting into the final Pokemon. Oh no, it's a Venusaur. What am I going to do? I tried to switch again, and it didn't work. I tried to switch to a Swampert, let it take it, but maybe that ended up working out better because he just used all of his energy. And although I'm in a situation where I've got Swampert versus Venusaur, because he did not have enough time to get back up to a Frenzy Plant since he just used it, and because I gained the energy in the beginning with Swampert and just did not expel it, that meant I was closer to getting to an Earthquake than he was to getting to a second Frenzy Plant. So it may not have worked out exactly how I planned to initially, but I'm very happy with these results. And this just goes to show, if you play things right, it's just so satisfying to beat a Venusaur with a Swampert just because of how weak Swampert is to the grass type attacks. But anyways, I would love to know what you think about this team in the comments section below. What about the other teams? Are you using any of them, or are you using a completely other team and seeing a lot of success? Anything and everything, let me know in the comment section below, and I will see you next time.